Welcome into WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock and Jeff Upson with you here for another evening talking about wrestling in the WPIAL and some really good tournaments from this past weekend featuring a number of WPIAL schools and a big one coming up this weekend featuring the Allegheny County. But Jeff, overall, another fun weekend of wrestling, and here we are, middle of January. We're going to also break down some of the standings, explain again kind of how many teams make the team tournament, and just a couple more weeks, we're going to be in that in the thick of the team tournament.
I told you it was going to come up quick. You know, we said that last week that it was going to, we're going to turn that corner midway through January, and we're going to be talking about the team tournaments and everything that's coming up. But yeah, I had a hell of a time up at the Midwinter Mayhem at IUP. Great tournament. Got to see some high level wrestling, but there was a lot of good action this weekend. We had the Burgerstown tournament, we had the Westmoreland County tournament, and this weekend we have Escape the Rock, which Connellsville is going to be at, and we also have the Allegheny County tournament, which PA Power Wrestling is going to be streaming. So we'll be there the next 2 days. Excited to look forward to talk about that tournament, but also kind of look to see where the teams are, because things are starting to take shape.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's first take a look at the individual side and look at this past weekend. The Burgerstown tournament continues to get stronger and stronger, Jeff, and again, a number of WPIAL schools in this one. When you look at the first couple of weights and you see the guys who won it, Chase Karrenbauer of Grove City, Bruce Anderchak of Quaker Valley, really no surprise. They're strong and really dominant wrestlers. But then at 121, Jonathan Emma of Mount Lebanon ends up winning the title. So right away out of those first three weights, kind of thoughts and who kind of stuck out to you outside of the champs?
I think Jonathan Emma stuck out to me because we expected Chase Karrenbauer to do what he does. He's a top 10 guy in the nation. And Bruce Anderchak, same thing. He's a veteran at this weight, and I think he's going to continue just to prove that as the season goes on. But Jonathan Emma was the one that kind of, I'm not saying surprised me, but if you look at the weight, it was a good weight class. You had Noah Collins who took fourth, but Kasanovic from Avonworth was third. He beat Ben Fuller from Meadville, who was a state qualifier last year. So Jonathan Emma, that's a good step in the right direction for him, and somebody that we don't see a ton of, but I think this is a big win for him.
Yeah, and even looking at some of the other wrestlers too, Derek Allen of Elwood City placed in third, getting a follower. Victor Wagner of North Catholic in that third and fourth place match. I thought he kind of stuck out as well in those earlier weights. 127, Antonio Bonai of Central Valley, a dominant performance in winning the title. Drake McClure of Bentworth got to wrestle Mason Wright of Best Center. They'll wrestle probably at least 10 times during the season, but he picked up the 4-0 victory. And then Don Ferraro of Pine Richland had a great tournament, and he majors Matt Dana of Quaker Valley 15-7.
Yeah, that was Matt Dana's first time down to 139. I think we had talked about last week that he was starting to descend down to that. Start at 127. Antonio Bonai, he had a really, that's a good win over Tanner Hamilton. Tanner Hamilton is pretty tough, and he didn't make him look too tough. 133, Jake McClure and Mason Wright, I think probably wrestle 30 times a season. That's like the standard. Like, you got to wrestle that many times. And I think it's going to be a 4-point, 3-point, 2-point match every single time they wrestle. But Drake did end up getting the win this time. And Dom Ferraro, again, just another one where we're like, he's just been the steady horse for Pine Richland. Like, he's just been there for, a long time doing everything, looking at what the results as he's had. This is not surprising to see that he beat Matt Dana the way he did. He's just super consistent, and I think this is his year where maybe like his brother, where he's going to kind of break out when it comes to Hershey.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Quick mention for Danny Smith of Burgerstown at 127. Obviously, Bonai gets all the spotlight, but he was dominant, won by tech fall to finish in third place. Logan Connolly of Chartiers Valley, a lot about McLaurin, right? But he ended up finishing in third as well at his
Yeah.
weight at 133 with a major as well. 145, Hudson Homan of Grove City was a winner by tech fall in the finals. Liam Hine of Mars, the highest WPIAL finisher, finishing in third. Cody Hamilton of Grove City, he beat Lucas Boyer of Elizabeth Forward 7-2 at 152. And how about Gabe Lilly of Elwood City? He just continues to roll here in the season. He beats Owen Ivsick of Bentworth 12-11.
That had to have been the match of the night, right? And there was two guys this weekend from the WPIAL that exceeded expectations and shot up the rankings. One was Gabe Lilly in Double A, but the second one we're going to talk about Braden White from TJ in Triple A. I'll start at 145. Liam Hine from Mars had a very good win over Jacoby Thompson from Meadville. Thompson's a guy who was ranked in the state coming into this past week, so Liam Hine's able to knock him off. Cody Hamilton beat Lucas Boyer. Not a surprise there, but Lucas Boyer is on his way down to 145. In fact, this weekend at the Allegheny County Tournament, he will be at 145, so probably a little bit light. And Cody Hamilton, he's full size 152. But Gabe Lilly, man, what I think we spoke this into existence because we talked about this last week, right? And how Gabe is like a guy who we feel like has been around forever. He's been getting big wins since his freshman year. He picked a really good time to get a big win over Owen Nipchik, 12-11. But if you look at this weight class, he had Cole Gibbons there as well, who's a state qualifier. Logan Noyes from Burgettstown, who Gibbons beat in sudden victory. Gabe Lilly just shot up the rankings, and man, that was cool. That was cool to see because we've seen Owen so many times this year, but we just haven't seen Gabe, and that was a really big win for him.
Well, and you know what? He also wrestled Gibbons as well in the semis, and that match went into overtime, and Lilly gets the fall in overtime over Gibbons. So, give it up to Gabe Lilly. He knocks off Cole Gibbons and Onisic in the same weekend in tight matches. One a little bit lower scoring. I think it was 2-2 before he got the fall in overtime. And then also, kind of worth mentioning as well, Jeff, 160, Logan Noyes of Burgestown, he took Gibbons to overtime,
Yeah.
lost 4-1, but he had himself a good tournament as well. Looking ahead to the final four-way classes, 172, Cash Morell of Cochranton beats Caleb Kinsey of Armstrong 11-5. Kinsey's had a good season. Michael Lawrence of Chartiers Valley finished in third. And Mac Miller of Pine Richland falls all the way to fifth, beating Marcus Ritchie in that fifth and sixth place match. Lawrence beat Carter Morvay of North Hills 7-0. I would say 172, Jeff, was probably one of the deeper weights.
When Mac Miller is finishing fifth at a weight, that's a pretty deep weight class. Now he took some losses that I don't think I wasn't anticipating him to take, but Michael Lawrence has had a good season. Carter Morvay, same thing. Like those two have had a pretty good season. Kinsey as well. Those Armstrong guys, I think I said this after the Panther holiday, their team was just very well prepared, and it seemed like all of them were in the mix. Mac Miller, though, he's going to have to rebound from this. I'm curious, and I haven't seen him. I'll see him this weekend, but I haven't seen how big he is. Like he wasn't the tallest wrestler in the world, and the fact that he's up at 172, I'm just curious how big he is, and if maybe he's more of a natural like 165 pounder, right? I don't know, but that was a really deep weight class.
189, Dominic Willis of Laurel got a fall in the finals over Tay Bradshaw of Armstrong to win it. 215, Colton Carlson of Laurel. He had a win over Brennan Brissinger of Quaker Valley. And a 285, Colin White of West Green, able to redeem himself from the Tri-County, and he beats Casey Wilson of Laurel 4-1 for the title.
Yeah, White is is that guy who, we talked about last week where he fell in the first round, came all the way back for third, pinned his whole way through there. You got to give it up for Laurel heavyweights here. I don't know what Laurel's
Yeah.
doing. It almost reminds me of Brookville. Brookville has like Murders Row from 89, 215 and heavyweight. Laurel has the same thing at 189, 215 and heavyweight, with Casey Wilson being the heavyweight. But Carlson had a phenomenal tournament. He beat a very tough freshman in Brensinger from Quaker Valley. And you look at some of the other guys in that weight class. You had Suter there from Carlington. Willis is the other one who, Ty Bradshaw from Armstrong is pretty solid, pretty tough, and Willis was able to come out and pin him to win that. So, yeah, shout out to Laurel, their upper weights. I would also like to say Parker Cunningham from South Park at heavyweight. I thought he had a really good tournament because you looked at how deep 285 was. You had Barbish finishing fifth and Heath finishing sixth. Cunningham was able to beat Heath. I thought that was a really deep weight class as well as heavyweight. So it's nice to see these weight classes for rankings purposes kind of, well, sometimes it makes it easier, sometimes it makes it harder, but it helps to kind of figure out where that order really is.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It was heavyweights are kind of funky too, right? Because you see the falls and you're like, oh, dominant performance, but the next week the other guy beats him, right? So
Right.
it's hard to say, especially towards the 285. But for Colin White, obviously medaling at Powerade, Casey Wilson hangs tough with him. Laurel's definitely got some strength in those heavier weights. You look at the Westmoreland County Tournament, another place where a number of the WPIAL schools were wrestling in this past weekend. You look at the first three weights there. Jeff Bo Fennick of Franklin Regional, dominant with a tech fall in the finals to place first. Dylan Barrett of Penn Trafford, a major to win at 114, and Leo Joseph of Latrobe, a fall in the first period to win it at 121.
Yeah, I mean, Fennec has been one of our top ranked wrestlers at 107 pounds all season in AAA, so it's not a surprise there to see him do well. But Dylan Barrett had a good match with Klippa, who beat Colangelo from Franklin Regional in the semifinals. So that was a good win for him. And of course, at 121, we didn't have Landon Sidden because he just wrestled 3 of the hardest tournaments in the nation. So I think he deserves a weekend off. Although it would have been nice to see him win a county tournament, I can understand that he probably needs a little bit of rest. But Leo Joseph steps up and wins it at 121 pounds. Nate Gulabon from Norwin, who presumably is Landon Sidden's backup, finished third. Like that was pretty impressive for him, and I think he's gonna and Norman's got a really good group of young wrestlers, sophomore, freshmen. They have some 8th graders coming up, and they're going to be good for a long time. But we need to see them separate, right? You have a log jam of some of them in the lower weight, so they need to kind of separate here. And I think Golubon is one of those guys that could be a factor.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Just disappointing that you got one of the best in the nation right in front of you.
Sure.
But if they could find a way to get him into the lineup, it only strengthens that Norwin team the rest of the way. 127, Anthony Mucci of Derry, a big win in the finals, defeats Cam Baker of Burrell 6-3 to win the title. 133, Luke Willishaw of Latrobe gets his 100th fall. He does it over Chase Smith of Franklin Regional to win the title there. And Julian Bertucci at 139 over Soto of Bell Vernon, 1-0.
So, yeah, we'll start with Mucci. I mean, that was a big win over Cam Baker. Now, Anthony had finished, he placed at Powerade. Cam Baker did not. So, for rankings purposes, Mucci was ahead of him, but that was mainly because of common opponents, not necessarily beat him head-to-head. This was a big win for him head-to-head. Cam Baker's a guy who's been on the medal stand in Hershey for every year he's wrestled. So I think that was probably a big confidence boost for Mucci to get that win. Luke Wilshell is just going to do Luke Wilshell things. I mean, he's I'm happy to see he's healthy and recording his 100th pin in his career. It's also good to see Chase Smith back for Franklin Regional. I'm sure Matt Leaby's happy to have him back in the lineup because remember he was out for the first couple months there of the season. And Bertucci, same thing. That's a big win over Soto. Soto's a guy who we don't necessarily have a lot of film on because he came over from Connecticut, but we do know he had a really good Trojan Wars tournament. So for him to wrestle in his first county tournament, Bertucci getting that win there, I thought that was a statement by Bertucci.
Yeah, and a couple other notes as well. Jake Stewart of Burrell, he had a solid tournament, placing third at 133. 139 was, I thought, a deeper weight. Nico Sarnik of Franklin Regional finished third. He beats Nate Klingensmith of Norwin 7-4. Brett Klim of Derry was the fifth place finisher, beating Austin Latiker of Latrobe 4-1. So the 139 to me, very competitive weight class.
Yeah, I mean, kind of going back to like 172 at the Burgestown tournament. When you have Brett Klim finishing fifth, it's a deep weight class.
145 pounds, Max Firestein of Franklin Regional. He was your champion, beating Gage Mamie of Norwin 4-0. Mason Horwat of Derry, a huge win over Cole Doppelauer of Bell Vernon by major to win it at 152. And Ewan Olson of Derry, a win over Jack White of Norwin 6-1 for the title at 160.
I like this really for the team portions of it too, because we get to see some Norwin Franklin Regional head-to-heads. We get to see Derry in there as well. And and Derry and Burrell, because Burrell, we know, is kind of like leading the charge in Double-A, but Derry is not far behind. And with Norwin and Franklin Regional, I think Franklin Regional probably has the edge, but it's nice to see where some of these Norwin guys match up head-to-head. And you get to see some of that. The Max Firestein getting the win over Mamie at 145 pounds, which I thought was a good win for the freshman. Horwat just dominated Doppelhauer, a very good Doppelhauer who's a state qualifier. But then you get to see some of the other guys like Olson beating Jack White from Norwin, Ethan Cartwright from Franklin Regional beat Shear for like the third or fourth time this season. So yeah, I mean it's good for those coaches to kind of see, okay, like if I need to bump guys around, especially those with flexibility and guys at multiple weights, to kind of steal a win here or there. I think that's pretty. It's a good benchmark for those coaches.
172, Mario Hutcherson of Kiski area. He returned to the mat, and he won by major decision over Isaac Lasinski of Burrell for the title. 189, a good one. Brady Brown of Derry beat Mark Gray of Kiski 9-4, and his teammate Abe Taylor right behind him in third place. It's tough for Kiski, obviously, having you talked about the Murders Row for Laurel, but Kiski has in the heavier weights. Yeah, they have 4 with 3 weight classes. Yeah. But Hutcherson wins it. Gray in second, Taylor in third in those 2 weights.
If they would have had the old weights, right, where we had 195, they would have been sitting pretty, right? Hutcherson, yeah, I mean he's going to continue to impress us, and he's beaten Lasinski. Remember, that was his only match of the Powerade tournament. Right. He's beaten him at least a couple times already this season. So, no real surprise there. Hutcherson's considered one of the top in the state and in the nation. The interesting piece to me was at 189, Brady Brown avenged that loss to Mark Gray. Remember, Mark Gray teched him at the Powerade tournament. And I've seen this a lot. I mean, I'm scouring through results every single day. When you rank 240 plus wrestlers, you have to go through a lot of results. And I've seen so much during this season where 2 weeks, a wrestler, they'll wrestle each other twice in 2 weeks. The first time wrestler A wins by major, the second time wrestler B wins by, decision or tech fault. Like, it's just kind of weird how the transitions have happened where wrestlers are losing big and then winning or vice versa. It's just kind of odd. And Brady Brown, that was his day against Mark Gray. But that was a good weight class as well. You had Mundorf from Ligonier Valley taking fifth. I'm not sure what exactly happened with Tasso Whipple, but he had to DQ out of the tournament. I would have liked to see him kind of in that mix at that third and fourth place.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was a great weight class at 189, especially when you have 2 solid guys from Kiski in the mix. And I think it's just honestly the scoring. We talked a little bit about it, right? With the one move, it's 7 points. You can easily rack up a quick tech, and then the match is totally different the next time if you don't get that opening takedown. Then it's a different match.
Yeah.
So that's where this additional scoring can really fluctuate in regards to who is the better wrestler. It could be one of those times where really these guys are more like 6-4, 3-2 type matches, but instead with the inflated scores, it turns one way or another.
Yeah, and on paper, it's a major and it's a lot more out of hand, but really, it's a lot closer than that.
Yep. 215 pounds, Elijah Brown of Bell Vernon, a big 4-0 win over Cooper Roskoski of Kiski to win the title. And Ryder Ekus of Kiski, he won by fall in the finals over Marco Scarton of Latrobe to win it at 285.
215 in the state is all dominated by WPIAL wrestlers. This moved up Elijah Brown one rank in the state rankings up to number 2. So this was a big win for him. And I just saw a comment. I don't know if it was his mom or somebody just commented to say on Facebook that he hasn't given up an offensive point. The only point that he's given up was a full Nelson that he hit. He hit a full Nelson. So it's crazy that a Fargo champion and the number 2 ranked guy in the state has hit a full Nelson in high school, but it does happen. But Elijah Brown beating Cooper Roskoski moved him from number 3 to number 2. So if you look at the state rankings, Jake Conroy from Ringgold's 1, Brown's 2, Roskoski's 3, Roman Thompson's 4, Kendall Orr is 5th. He is also from the West region, and he just earned a tech fall in the finals of the Midwinter Mayhem. So, I mean, those 5, like if you have 5 guys that come out of the West region, 5 of them are ranked 1 through 5 in the state. Like, I mean, it's going to be tough. But, yeah, Brown did really well. Caden Shannon had a big win over Luke Boylan. That to me surprised me. Probably was an off match for Boylan, but a good win for Shannon nonetheless. And Ekus, I think, has quietly built himself up as one of the top heavyweights in the WPIAL. Yeah,
and a good tournament for Aiden Kuhn of Borough as well. He finished in 3rd place, winning by a major in that 4th place match. It's interesting you said top 5 from 215 all coming from the West region, because whenever you're filling out your state brackets, boy, if you're a region champ or a region runner-up from somewhere else, you're going to be hoping you don't get that draw of someone from the West.
Absolutely not.
Looking at you mentioned the Midwinter Mayhem as well. And let's first start at 107 pounds, Jeff, and we're going to see this guy this weekend, Javion Chambers of Highlands. He had a good tournament, finishing in 2nd place, and Zach Rehack of Thomas Jefferson finished in 3rd.
I was very impressed with Chambers. I don't get to see Highlands a whole heck of a lot, but I saw him last year and thought, man, this kid's scrappy, right? This year he looks, he's a big 107-pounder. I thought he looked really good, and yeah, he lost to Keegan Bassett, which, Keegan Bassett's one of the top-ranked guys in the nation. But for Chambers, I think this is his year where he's trying to get on the podium in Hershey. He hasn't qualified there yet. Rehack, same thing. I think he's had just a quiet, good season. For the last 2 years, he's kind of been right in the mix, and I think he's starting to get over that a little bit. He beat Cam Smith from Trinity 10-2 in that 3rd place match.
Yeah, Michael Johnson of West Allegheny ended up finishing in 8th, and injury defaulted out in that last match. So may not have been the performance he was hoping for at 107. I know we talked a bit about him last week.
Yeah, obviously I don't think it's how he wanted to finish it, but I think he's got to get, you got to get healthy for the postseason. So, hopefully it's nothing serious.
114, Nick McGarity of Peters Township finished in 7th place. 121, Santino Sloboda of Butler. He was your champion. He beats Braden Weaver of Altoona 4-2. Does not get the matchup with Brock Rothermel like we had talked about as a potential in the preview show.
Yeah, I think a lot of people put the cart before the horse here and said, okay, we're going to see Sloboda and Rothermel, part 2. and Braden Weaver was like, not so fast. And I was on that mat for the semifinals, and he was able to get the win over Rothermel, and Sloboda ended up beating him in the finals there. Sloboda, he's good, right? And he's crafty. Like, he's a crafty wrestler. I just love watching him compete, because he does things that you just don't normally see often. I want to go back to 114 real quick. Nick McGarity from Peters Township. This was a loaded weight class. I mean, he was 7th at Midwinter Mayhem. He placed in Hershey last year. This was a weird weight class where you had a lot of guys like Eli Herring ended up beating Easton Mall, and you had a lot of freshmen mixed with some sophomores, Albanese and Gallegos from Du Bois, who was a Powerade runner-up this year. So, yeah, it was kind of a weird weight class, but 14 and 21 did not disappoint whatsoever because they were just all through fireworks.
Yeah, Gallegos, a Powerade runner-up, and finishes 4th at this tournament. So just goes to show that sometimes you have the best tournaments in the nation, but on any given day, guys can show up and show out. And in addition to that, right, a lot of these tournaments, it just depends on weight class, right? Sometimes your
and
weight's going to be
matchups
stronger than others.
Yeah.
127 pounds, there was not a WPIAL placer in the top 8. 133, AJ Snatchko of West Allegheny finished in 8th place. And I know it's not WPIAL focused, Jeff, but Jack's Forest, Aaron Seidel, was it everything that was made up to be?
Yeah, of course it was. It was awesome, man. It was cool. It was a cool atmosphere, cool environment. Jax was it was fun to watch. It was fun to watch in person because you could see like the adjustments and the talking with the coaches, and it was really cool to see. Just it was a high level match, right? We could see that match as at the NCAA tournament for a medal, right? That's how good it was. I forget where we left off at 27. Yeah, there was no WPIAL guy there, but Will Detter beats Dom Deputy, which was a good win for him. That was just a stacked weight class at 127 and 133. You said about AJ Snatchko. I thought he had a good tournament as well, because he could easily get lost in the shuffle there at 133 pounds.
139 pounds. WPIAL did not have a wrestler in the top 8. 145, Case Chop of Butler finished in 3rd place. Didn't get the opportunity to wrestle Dalton Perry again at this tournament, but does come away with a solid tournament.
No, and I think a lot of people were expecting Dalton Perry to not have the same result as he did last year with Case Chop, but Jackson Butler comes out and beats Dalton Perry to make the finals, where he has to wrestle his teammate Bo Bassett. So for the second year in a row, we do not get Dalton Perry versus Bo Bassett because of a loss there. Although it's not WPIAL focus, I do want to mention Brant Hare got a big win over Sam Herring, 2 of the top 10 guys in the nation. And I know his father and Coach Denny is watching and listening. He's making really snide comments to me through text message right now, saying something about how unattractive I am. So I wanted to make sure I gave a shout out to Brant Hare. Brant, he looked really good. That was a stacked weight class as well. But 145, Case Chop, he's down at 145. He looks good there. I'm excited to see what he does in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, I had to say I'd agree with him, Jeff. Sorry, buddy.
What? I'm just ugly. I know I'm ugly. I get it.
I think it's the nose, right? Is that what everybody points out?
Yes, Greg, it's the nose. I'm aware that I have a giant, huge nose. Okay, it's I've had it my whole life. It's not going away. Even though I had surgery on it to replace my deviated septum, it's still huge. I get it.
152 for the WPIAL. Darius McMillan of Peters Township, he finished in 5th place and knocks off Griffin Reed of North Allegheny 4-1 in that 5th place match. 160 pounds, just coupling a couple weights together. Braden White of Thomas Jefferson, he had a great tournament, finished in 3rd place, and really, I know we've been talking about him, Jeff, but may have put himself on the map as far as, across the state in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, going back to 152, Darius McMullen he avenged the loss to Griffin Reed from NA. Reed had beat him earlier this season, so McMillan was able to come back and get that win. Again, a super deep weight class there at 152. But for me, in the WPIAL, Braden White was the guy that I left most impressed with. This was a very deep weight class from top to bottom, AA and AAA. And Braden White was behind, he finished third behind Melvin Miller, who's number 1 in the nation, and Luke Sipes, who's probably number 8 in the nation right now. That was impressive, right? He did get teched by Luke Sipes, but he beat Samuel Medina from Mid-Valley, who is a very, very tough freshman, who, by the way, beat Lonzy Vielma this year from Collinsville at the Top Hat tournament. So, I mean, that's transitive property, and Braden White didn't jump ahead of Lonzy Vielma in the rankings, but he certainly made a strong jump in the rankings because of his great weekend. We'll see if this can continue in that upward trend. But, I mean, this is a kid who, as a youth wrestler, I mean, he was beating the best wrestlers in the state. I think he won at least 2 PJW titles. I mean, he was really good. He's also just as it happens to be, is really good at football too. And I think football kind of was the focus. He was injured as well. But man, like if he's going to be an integral part, not only of the team, but I'd love to see him compete in the individual postseason.
Yeah, and he's only going to continue to get better as the season goes on. And you could say that for most wrestlers, right? But especially a guy who's just trying to get his feet back under him on the wrestling mat. So, he could take much bigger strides from the beginning of the season till the end of the season, where most guys might get marginally better. You're going to see bigger strides out of Braden White.
Yeah.
172, his teammate Bodie Marlowe, a big major decision win for the title at 172 pounds. And at 189 pounds, Zach LeBrier of Thomas Jefferson, he finished in 4th place.
So this Marlowe and Hurd match was one of the craziest matches I've seen of the season. Hurd was up 11-1 at one point. Marlowe gets hit in the family jewels, and it's not good. James Fleming goes out and tries to help him out a little bit, and it was like a flip switched. He gave up a few more points, but then all of a sudden he started chipping away. I mean, 26-17 for the number 2 versus number 3 wrestlers in the state, right? Both are nationally ranked, depending on what publication you're looking at. Mason Lindenmuth and I were doing the commentary, and it was 11-1. We're like, well, another turn here, and Brian Hurd's going to win it by tech fall. It turns out Bodie Marlowe is like, yeah, I'm going to wrestle here, and he wrestles all the way back, scores 25 points to win it 26-17. That was a fun match, man. I mean, obviously Aaron Seidel and Jax Forrest was the talk, but that match was a hell of a match. So if you haven't, go back to watch that. I think you should. LeBrier, same thing. I mean, just a steady wrestler for Thomas Jefferson. And again, from team implications, we know how good Thomas Jefferson has been as a team tournament, or from a team standing in the individual tournament. However, what's it going to be like when they wrestle a team that's solid from top to bottom? Their hammers, Braden White, LeBrier, they're going to get Shaw, they're going to get Shaw back this weekend. He's slated to compete at the Allegheny County Tournament. I mean, Shep Turk, like, you got some hammers there. It's those other guys that I'm very curious to see.
Yeah, and you know what? Going back to Bodie Marlowe, I feel like in watching a lot of his matches, he's a slow starter, right? He'll give up some points early, and it's like, okay, and then he just battles back and just really dominates that second half of matches.
Yeah, you saw it at Powerade. You saw it at Powerade where he lost, and then he wrestles the same kid in the same tournament and beats the brakes off him. Yeah,
exactly. He's a slow starter in tournaments, which kind of worries you, right? Especially at the state tournament, to get upset early. If you're like looking for a guy that might get upset early, it could be Bodie Marlowe, because most tournaments, it's like first match or second match, he tends to get slow out of the gates. But even in some of the matches I've seen him wrestle, like, he'll just wear guys down and, slowly battle back and ends up winning these matches. And, that 72 final is just like, goes to show, right? Like, he's down big, but somehow makes it back and wins the match.
Could you imagine if matches were 9 minutes? He'd be beating guys by a lot of points here. I mean, yeah, you're right, and I think Bodie's going to be just fine. I mean, I don't think he's going to get upset. I think I think there's a good chance we see him in the state finals, depending on where he's going to be opposite side of Asher Cunningham. So, I honestly, I'd like to see that match. I'd like to see Asher and him wrestle. It might be a little bit different this time around.
Yeah, and Pitt's got to be happy that it's a 7-minute match instead of a 6-minute match, right? When he goes to college.
Yeah, or 9. Yeah.
Yeah, right. If he goes to overtime. 215 pounds. The WPIAL had a 7th place finisher in Mason Hartung from North Allegheny, and a 285. You mentioned Shep Turk. He finished in 2nd place to Rowan Holmes of Somerset. Braden McCunna of North Allegheny finished in 4th place. Cam Dana of West Allegheny finished in 6th place.
So 285 was weird. I had to go, like, there was a camera that needed fixed or something happened. And then I also made a pit stop at the bathroom right as 285 was starting. And I come back and the match is over. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? And they're like, well, Shep Turk was up like 12 something and then ends up getting pinned. I was like, oh, okay. And then I went back and I watched it, and Shep Turk did. He got a takedown near fall, another takedown and near fall, he basically threw him to his back twice for to go up big. And then in the second period, Rowan Holmes took him down and pinned him. So yeah, that's Shep Turk is, again, I think somebody that's going to continue to get better as the year goes on. But, you're up that big on the number 2 guy in the state. You got to finish that match.
A lot of great wrestling from the Midwinter Mayhem. As far as looking ahead, Jeff, and, we'll kind of let's dive a little bit first into where we're at team-wise before looking ahead to this weekend, because obviously we're going to have some good wrestling coming up. But quickly, a mention, I know we talked about how Kanamack and McGuffey were going to be at the Virginia Duels, and Kanamack finished in 4th place in the American division, and McGuffey was 9th in their division. Cathedral Prep and Nazareth were the winners of the 2 divisions.
Yeah, and I did get confirmation, even though we didn't get it, it's not in track yet, that Kanamack won the pride of Cannonsburg, Aaron Caldwell, a.k.a. Buck, 38-21, Kanamack won over Peters Township. So although that was not in any publication, you're not going to find it in the paper, my man Buck's got us.
Good thing we have him in our corner. But you look at the team standings, Jeff, and so basically just to kind of give everyone a quick rundown, and I know we talked about it in the opening show that we had as far as how the WPIAL will do their team tournament section. So Class AA has 41 teams. Class AAA has 42. It's broken down into 9 sections. Some sections have 4, some have 5 in their section that they have to wrestle for their dual matches. The top 2 teams from each section will advance to the WPIAL championships. And there's also 2 wild card teams that are determined by the steering committee. So guarantee yourself a spot. You got to be in the top 2 to advance. So a 20-team bracket for the team tournament in both AA and AAA this year. And for the individual side, they combines this section 1, 2, and 3 is a section, 4, 5, and 6 is a section, 7, 8, and 9 is a section. Top 6 from each section advance to the WPIAL championships. So we'll go over that again once we get towards individuals, but just wanted to mention that as well. But when you look to the top 2 teams, Jeff, you're starting to kind of see some separation as far as the top teams in each section from the 9 that are in AA and AAA.
First of all, what are your thoughts on 9 sections? Can I get a rapid reaction to that?
I mean, it's a lot. It's I'm used to 3 sections myself. Obviously that's what. But that was
9,
20 years ago.
9
I guess.
sections.
Hard to believe.
9
20
sections.
years ago.
Yeah, I know it. We're freaking old. I mean, we're not as old as Denny Hare, but we're old.
Yeah, no doubt. And 9 sections just seems like a lot to me. 20 teams in the team tournament seems like a lot.
Well, I mean, half the team. You only have 41 teams in your district, and half of them make it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I think I'm guessing the issue is just getting, if you have a 9-team section, if you combine some of these, a 9-team, 12-team section, it's hard to get all these teams to wrestle all the duels. And they're trying to just save, time, I guess, as far as these teams wrestling in dual matches, I guess is the thought process behind it. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot for sure. I don't know, Jeff, do you want to break these down, or we just want to kind of leave it at that at this moment in time?
Well, I mean, I think there's a few interesting ones. So Section 1, Moon and West Allegheny are kind of in the lead there. Canamac Trinity of Section 2, they're the two leaders, and they will wrestle later this month. Bethel Park is leading Section 3. Peters Township, Mount Lebanon is also kind of in the mix there. And Section 4, Butler, North Allegheny, they're all undefeated in league action. Fox Chapel, Kiski area, both, again, undefeated in league action. 6, North Hills. The second team, it could be anybody. It could be Shaler, it could be Central Catholic. I don't think it'll be Penn Hills, but that's, Section 6 is not the deepest one. 7, TJ is undefeated. Bell Vernon and Ringgold are both in the mix there. And then 8, Collinsville and Latrobe, both undefeated. And 9, Franklin Regional and Norwin, both undefeated, with Penn Trafford and Plum trying to also potentially get a wild card there. Is that what we're calling it, a wild card?
Yeah, I guess that's what you call it. If you had to look at it right now, I mean, obviously there's still a lot to be decided, but who are your 2 wild card teams? I think it seems like most sections have a clear-cut top 2. But when you look at it, who are your top 2 wild cards at this moment?
Penn Trafford and Ringgold.
Okay.
Penn
Definitely
Trafford and
Penn
Ringgold.
Trafford.
Yeah,
Without
definitely
a
Penn
doubt.
Trafford. And I would say Ringgold, but also maybe like a Peters Township. I don't
Yeah, that's
know.
what I was thinking. Mount Lebanon, Peters, one of those 2 teams.
Well, Mount Lebanon,
Bethel Park will win it.
though two of them will get in. Bethel Park's going to win that section, and then either Mount Lebanon or Peters Township will get in as well. So I would say whoever does not get in of that 3 could be a wild card. But I think Ringgold as well, depending on how they finish.
Yep, I would agree with that. And definitely Penn Trafford would get one of them.
Yes.
Obviously, their 2 losses are to Franklin Regional and Norwin, who are 2 very good teams this season. You look on the other side to Double A, Jeff, Chartiers, Houston, and McGuffey lead Section 1. Burgestown, and how about those Avella Eagles are the top 2 teams in
Shout out
Section 2.
Avella.
That's right. They're back. They've been
They're
out
back.
for
It only took 20 years of you
years.
being gone, 20 years of Greg being gone, and Avella's back.
Well, they didn't have a team for the last couple of years, Jeff.
That's true. That's true.
They were with Fort Cherry for a couple of years there. Bentworth and Best Center and Jefferson Morgan all there in the mix. Bentworth has the undefeated streak right now. Section 4, Laurel and Elwood City sitting at the top. Section 5, Central Valley and Freedom. Section 6, Quaker Valley and Avonworth and Keystone Oaks, both 1-1. South Park and Southmoreland in Section 7 are 3-1. Elizabeth Ward not too far behind at 2-1. Section 8, Derry and Ligonier Valley, and Section 9, Burrell and Highlands. So those are the top 2 teams in each of those 9 sections. Who do you like as far as a couple wild card potentials?
Oh, geez. I would say Elizabeth Ford. I think they've had a good season, and they're in a little bit of a deeper section there. And then I would say maybe Jefferson Morgan as well from Section 3. I think but again, that could change. You could have Beth Center maybe being the one that needs the wild card. But I think those 2 sections are going to get a wild card.
The only other one I may consider might be Valley, only because their losses are Burrell and Highlands. And obviously we know Burrell's the top team in Double A. So you have the top team that's going to knock you out no matter what. But that's the only other one I would maybe even have a conversation about.
Yeah, and I don't know how they base it on, but I mean Valley only has 66 points for as compared to like Elizabeth Ford, who has 118, and I don't know. I'm not going to get too far into that, but yeah, 20 teams is a lot of teams for the district playoffs.
Yes, it definitely is. And we'll see some more wrestling action obviously come up here and get some more clarity as next week unfolds. When you look at this weekend, Jeff, the biggest tournament for the WPIAL is the Allegheny County Tournament, the last of the county tournaments. And we have some of the seeds as far as the breakdown for coming into the tournament. And, Jeff starts right off at 107 pounds, the guy we've been talking about, Javion Chambers.
Yeah, and I really hope we get to see him and Anthony Jones square off, AA versus AAA. Jones has had a good season thus far. Got to see him at the King of the Mountain tournament, looked good there, and I got to see Chambers last weekend at Midwinter, looked really good. So, but I wouldn't look past Zach Rehack as well. From TJ, he was third at the Midwinter, and Bryce Thomas as well from Moon. So yeah, 107 should be a good weight class.
Yeah, Chambers and gets the tougher half, right, as far as that goes. Rehack and Thomas both sitting at the top with Chambers, where Jones sitting on the bottom. 114 pounds, Bruce Anderchak of Quaker Valley, coming off his tournament title win in Burgestown. He's going to be the top seed in this weight class.
And I think Bruce just recorded his 100th victory. I think I saw something about him. A lot of guys, it seems like, got their 100th win this past weekend. Bruce Anderchak, I think, is going to be. I think that's, obviously he's a clear cut one here, but I'm very curious to see what Preston Bubash does from Elizabeth forward. He wrestled Anderchak at the Shar Houston tournament. It was a very close match. I think Bubash may end up being like the second best guy here, depending on where, if there's scratches or how the seats hold up. But I think Bubash is going to have a good tournament.
Yeah, and seeded fifth, so he won't get the opportunity to wrestle Anderchak in a final, but it will be a good semifinal as far as that goes. 121 pounds, Evan Schomburg of North Allegheny. He gets the top seed. You got Pierce Reinhardt of Bethel Park at 2, Austin Kasanovic of Avonworth 3, and Jonathan Emma of Mount Lebanon at 4.
Oh, and Brock Dennison too in there. That's a good weight class. And I got to go back to 114 real quick. Jaden Palembine from Bethel Park is also back. Tyler Nauman will be letting me know I forgot to mention that, but he's a critical component. He's a senior for Bethel Park. He's back in the lineup now, and he's in there at 114. So I'm very curious to see how he does there, because again, he's an integral part of that team. 121, I think, is one of the deeper weight classes. If maybe this is the deepest, I don't know exactly, but they're all pretty even. They're all in the same playing field, I think. And I think this is gonna be a good weight class. You have Reinhardt, who has a win over Kasanovic. Jonathan Emma has looked good all season. And then you even have Michael Warson from Fox Chapel. I really like him too. He's a guy who we had ranked in the state. I think this is a really good weight class, balanced.
127, Landon Funk, Fox Chapel gets the top seed. Colton Fisher, Bethel Park, the number 2.
Yeah, definitely not as deep as 121. You have 2 Fox Chapel guys seated in the top 3. Lucas Guzek from South Park, he's a freshman, has had a good season, so excited to see what he can do in this weight class as well.
133 pounds, Gus Stediford of North Allegheny is your top seed. Seth Miller of Bethel Park at number 2.
Cale Yannick is the one that I'm very curious to see here. Only 4-1 on the season, but he's a guy who is a regional place winner. If you remember a couple years back, he won the Allegheny County Tournament. I think he won. Now I'm second guessing myself. Did he lose in overtime? Regardless, he was battling, right? This is a good weight class too. Stedford and Miller, kind of the lead dogs here, but I think Cale Yannick, Logan Conley are going to be in the mix too. So yeah, 133 should be a good one.
You had mentioned that 121 was a solid weight, but I'd have to argue 139 may be one of the best.
Yeah.
Don Ferraro, Pine Richland number 1, Matt Dana at number 2, but the list goes on. 1 through 8 is really solid here at 139.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly off the top of my head how many of these are state ranked. 1, 2, 3, I think at least 4. Ferraro, Dana, we just, they wrestled. Owen Campbell has had a good season. Burford, and Mazenko. Chacon from Montour, even Haynes from Fox Chapel, and Stout from Bethel Park. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty stacked weight classes. all those guys have at least 11 wins on the season and no more than 7 losses. So yeah, it's a good weight class.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see who how they finish as far as that goes. 145, Ramil Islamov, Baldwin, your top seed. Lucas Boyer of Elizabeth Forward at 2, and Ethan Higgins, Bethel Park at 3.
Yeah, and I like Elijah Elser here too from Brashear. He's a guy who doesn't, obviously being from District 8, we don't get to see a whole lot or talk a whole lot about him, but I think he'll kind of surprise a few people. Dustin Kerr as well from Hampton. Baldwin just wrestled Bethel Park. We didn't see Islamov and Higgins wrestle, but we certainly could see that here. Lucas Boyer, again, down to 145 first time this season. I'm excited to see what he's able to do there.
152, the question is Maddox Shaw. Will he wrestle? He is entered into the tournament and is the top seed.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I think it was an abundance of caution that they kept him out for midwinter. Obviously the goal is Hershey to get a state title, so you want to make sure you're cautious with that, depending on how serious the injury is. But I do hope we get to see him here at the Allegheny County Tournament. Luke Dunlop is also here. He's a state qualifier. Griffin Reed, who we had just mentioned, lost to Darius McMillan there. Jack Dimert as well. Trent Reese. So yeah, I mean it's a solid weight class, but if Shaw goes, it's all his weight class.
160, Rook Smith of Montour gets the top seed. Cole Gibbons of Mount Lebanon at number 2.
I would say this is a good weight class too. You got Cheney Lewis Jr. from the Neighborhood Academy as well. I got to see him this past weekend at Midwinter Mayhem. Kellen Buggy is all the way down there at the 6th spot there. So I think that's, again, shows kind of the depth here. But Cooper Dietz, yeah, I think he could have a good tournament. Let's not forget he has a win over Cody Hamilton from Grove City, who we just talked about, won the Burgestown tournament at 152. Cole Gibbons, again, another little bit of a rebound for him.
172, Bodie Marlowe, Thomas Jefferson, your top seed. Michael Lawrence, Char Valley, number 2. Mac Miller, Pine Richland, number 3.
Yeah, and I feel like we've seen all these guys wrestle head-to-head multiple times already this year. Michael Lawrence, Mac Miller, Marcus Richard were all in that same bracket this past weekend at Burgestown. But and Marlowe, I think, is pretty much well ahead of the rest of the field here, but I really want to see, can a guy like Mac Miller rebound? Saplenik from Plum, I think he's another one who, he has a good season thus far, and if he can kind of, mix up the top 4 here. Lindsay from Carleton as well. Caden Willis from West Mifflin is also pretty solid. So I think a pretty well balanced. You have the top guy with Marlowe, but then there's a lot of balance there after him.
Also, Jeff, worth mentioning as well, Braden White at 160, not seeded in the top 8.
Yes.
So he's going to make things very interesting depending on where he's enters the bracket.
He could win the damn thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's where it's going to be interesting to see where he comes in, right? I mean, where if he's entered towards one of the top seeds, it could really make for an interesting bracket throughout the rest of the tournament, because it's not even just about like, oh, okay, let's say he feeds into the number 2 seed, Cole Gibbons goes down early to him, but it's just about then it's about who's dropping in the consolations, right? So it sets up some very interesting consolation matches as well. 189 pounds, Zach LeBrier of Thomas Jefferson is the number 1 seed, and Nez Green of Central Catholic, your number 2.
Yeah, and these two wrestled earlier in the season, and that's why LeBrier has that number 1 seed, because he beat Green head-to-head. I think these two are pretty much the guys here, but you have some other one. Markovich from South Park had a good Burgestown tournament. But mainly it's LeBrier and Green here.
215, Roman Thompson of Central Catholic gets the top spot.
Yeah, and Roman, again, only 13 matches on the season, but he's undefeated. He's ranked top 4 in the state here. I think he's the clear favorite, but I also like the balance between Suter, Hardtongue as well. Brandon Bressinger from Quaker Valley. I want to see how he does against some of these older guys.
285 should be a good one as well, with Shep Turk of Thomas Jefferson at the top.
Yeah, and this one again has some guys that have already hit this year. Michael Gibson has a win over Ben Lloyd. Um, heavyweight's just so hard to gauge and rank because you have so many guys that are winning close decisions, and then they're getting pinned, and then they're getting beat by guys that they have already beat. So, this is a definitely an interesting weight class because, again, it just is going to shake up the rankings again depending on how they finish. Lloyd could go back ahead of Gibson. McConaughey from North Allegheny, I think, has had a really good season. He had a good midwinter Mayhem. But yeah, I mean, it's you just never know what you're going to get. And again, Shep Turk was up 12-6 and he got pinned. So anything's possible here.
Should be good this weekend, Jeff. Do you know the times so people can tune in?
Yeah, wrestling starts at 11:30 tomorrow. I know that. I can get you the schedule real quick if you want to talk about Escape the Rock. Why I found that.
Yeah, Escape the Rock as well. Coming up this weekend in Connellsville. We'll be wrestling at that. And it's one of those tournaments that's probably up there. I mean, I guess what, Jeff? Maybe Midwinter Mayhem.
It's the second best of the state. Escape the Rock's the second best behind Powerade.
Yeah, it's probably the best, second half tournament, I guess you could say, as far as that goes. But Connellsville is going to have their hands full.
Yeah, they certainly are. And before I get into that, I will give you the time schedule here. So for the Allegheny County, wrestling starts at 11:30 tomorrow. They'll wrestle through the quarters. And then on Saturday, semifinals start at 11:30. And the finals are slated to start at around 4:30. So that's where we're at with that. For Connellsville at the ETR, yeah, you got a lot of really good teams. You have Faith Christian Academy, you've got Malvern Prep, you got Becca, you got St. Joe's Regional, you got Southern Regional, you got Bishop McDevitt, you got Father Ryan, you got just a ton of different powerhouse schools from all across the nation. Some of the guys that are seated, Tommy Gretz at 107 pounds is seated number 12. I don't believe there's anybody else until Kai Vielma, who is number 8 at 139. And Evan Petrovich is 4th, and Lonzy Vielma is number 13. So yeah, I mean it's gonna be a really good tournament. It always is.
The other big tournament coming up is going to be the Ultimate Warrior duels that Burrell will be taking place. Burrell, this is their time every year, right, where they get to test to see where they match up state-wise. I know it was a tournament, a dual tournament that Josh Shields look forward to every year. Obviously, Steven Sanding's now the head coach, but Shields still helping out from time to time. But I know it's just one that every year Burrell looks forward to it to really gauge themselves as far as on the state level.
Yeah, I mean, you have some of the best teams in the state. And I also wanted to mention Nolan Rice is seated number 12 at 121 for the Escape the Rock from Connellsville. But going back to the Ultimate Warrior tournament, I mean, yeah, for years it's always been the best AA schools in the state going head to head. And Reynolds is down this year, but Chestnut Ridge is still pretty solid. Obviously, Burrell's pretty solid. So yeah, that's going to be a good one. It's always nice to see that happen. And interestingly enough, Penn Trafford's there this year. I'm not saying there's never been a AAA school there, because I'm sure there has, but there's not historically AAA schools there. So it's going to be interesting to see what Penn Trafford can do.
And it's going to be interesting as far as, how they battle it out, because I think we've talked about how AA, the top 3 seem to be set, right? I mean, Faith Christian and Bishop McCord are 1 and 2, not only in the state of Pennsylvania, not only in AA, not only in the state of Pennsylvania, but really in the nation. The 2 best schools out there. And so they're going to take up the top 2 spots. And then you have Bishop McDevitt, who is a solid number 3. You're really battling for 1 spot. And so this, this tournament this weekend, I think, is really going to help those teams figure out where they are.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Because outside the top 3, it's, you can kind of make a case for, Montoursville. You can look at Berks Catholic. You can look at Chestnut Ridge. You can look at Clearfield. And there's a lot of schools that are vying for that next tier, right? It looks like from the schedule, Frazier's there as well. So Frazier's there. Penn Trafford, and Burrell are all going to be there. First round, Penn Trafford versus Brookville, Fraser versus Chestnut Ridge, then Burrell and Brookville, Chestnut Ridge, Reynolds, Burrell and Fraser. And it looks like obviously they end with Burrell and Reynolds at the last round there. So, yeah, this is always a good test for the Burrell Bucks. And there's been years where they've only won one dual meet there, or they've run none, and they've come back and won the WPIAL and done just fine. So it again, good measuring stick for them.
Yeah, I don't know how many shows that we can play back and be like, hey, you know what? They didn't look great, or they took a thumping up there.
Yeah, we would talk to Josh Shields and be like, yeah, the guys they battled, but it's all preparation.
Yeah, and then you start to think about, okay, some of these WPIAL schools that are wrestling hot right now and doing well, and then all of a sudden Burrell just does what they do every year and rallies and wins another title. So should be fun. A lot of good wrestling coming up this weekend, and some more duels coming up as well. Like we mentioned, should have a much clearer picture, I think, Jeff, in regards to those top two in each section. Hopefully by this time next week.
We will see.
For Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. We appreciate you listening and watching in.